So the idea came to me as I was riding my motorcycle home to make a video about alcohol. Don't ask me why. I think it's because it's just something that's been weighing on my mind, and I'm self-interested enough, or kind of, what's the word, vain enough to think that it's worthy of a video on YouTube. I don't really care if it gets any views. If it gets a few views, whatever. It's mainly just for my own sort of cathartic gain, because it's something that's been weighing on my mind, and I kind of wanted to take the opportunity to talk about it for a couple of minutes, seeing as it's been on my mind, and I think it's a really important topic for me personally, where I am in my life. Probably a lot of people who are my age will be able to relate to this video, because obviously this is about alcohol, it's about boozing, it's about Rausch, what the Germans call Rausch, which is essentially this big plume of, from what I understand, it's like a plume of intoxicated smoke, and that's basically a good sort of metaphor for my mid to late 20s, or you could say my 20s thus far, because I'm 28 now. I'm sort of on the dawn of knocking on the door of my 29th, and I don't really regret my 20s. I mean, I'm coming up to 30, obviously. Do I regret my 20s? In a way, no, because I do think that it's a good opportunity to sort of party and have fun and let your hair down and do all the sorts of things that you kind of want to get out of your system, and go out there and, go to Soho and drink a lot and get drunk and have kind of crazy nights and, live for the moment. And I've done that stuff, and I've enjoyed it to some extent. But I think that the problem with it is that, it's pretty obvious what the problems are with it. And as I like to say, everybody can have a good idea, but the doing part is the tricky part, isn't it? Everybody has good ideas, and probably most people have good enough ideas that they could, make a lot of money, or they could be very successful. But the difference between everybody's good ideas and the kind of the success part is the doing. And I think I lost my train of thought. I don't know what I was talking about, but yeah, I think that the problem with boozing, and the issue that I've had recently with boozing, is that I have personal goals. I'm sure we all have personal goals. Everybody watching this video does. And I think booze has just been, on the whole, it's been that one thing. If I look back for sort of through the last, 5 or so years, I think booze has been the kind of momentum blocker. It's been the thing that's kind of not ruined, but it's the thing that's held me back, because every time that I've wanted to achieve something, it's been that one thing during the week that would kind of get in the way. It's that one habitual practice. It's kind of like become ritualistic. It's become religious. It became religious in my life for a long time, and became an integral part, and it still probably is. And I'm still kind of in the throes of it. It's only within the last couple of weeks that I've sort of managed to whittle it down to, I drank once last week, which for me is phenomenal. But I think, as I say, it's been that one thing that's I'm kind of whizzing all over the place here, and I'm darting from sort of pillar to post, but I'll try and keep the focus in one spot at a time. I think booze has been that one thing that's held me back from achieving my goals. If I look back on the last 5 years, as I say, it blocks momentum. It blocks your ability to get momentum up. And obviously it's quite a thematic thing at the moment, because obviously we've got the World Cup on, and everybody's probably watching it. And then you'll notice that the biggest complaint probably leveled at this World Cup is that they've got those stupid hydration breaks. So just as people are sort of building up momentum, obviously it's knocked flat onto its face again in the form of basically what is an advert break, so that the Americans can, or whoever can, sort of advertise their products and make more money. So it's money orientated, but those breaks, you'll notice they break up the flow of play, just as some teams have been on the cusp of maybe potentially moving the game forward. It's been interrupted, and I would say that booze is very similar to that. The way it operates, it blocks momentum. And also remember, with alcohol, It stifles learning, because when you're drunk, you can't really retain knowledge or learn, and I think that's very important to have in mind. Like, booze stays in your system for a long time. Does it materially affect learning? Yes, it does. We know it does. Does it materially affect the brain? Well, that's the whole point of drinking, is to materially affect the brain. So therefore, we know that it does. So I'm just pointing out these things because if you're somebody who wants to actually achieve their potential, which I do, and listen, I'm not a complete sort of bar humbug, like party pooping, home wrecking sort of guy who wants to just cast some kind of dark cloud over boozing. It's obviously got a place in society. I think that I'm at the point in time now, or maybe I'm at the point in my chronology of my life, what more life I actually have, where I've kind of priorities have realigned, and I've kind of come to the point where I'm like, well, I want to actually be able to buy a house, because I'm sort of in rented accommodation in London. I rent my place, and I don't have a lot to show for anything, because I earn it's okay what I earn, but most of it, if I actually counted how much of it I spent last month on booze, and it was around £500 in 1 month, and that's just from what I could tell. I mean, I discounted corner shops and anywhere, the kind of transactions where I couldn't tell what it was, but it was more than that. It was probably closer to £700. So you're talking about a month's rent on just booze. So think about that. And I already have plans to put away, if possible, about £500 a month towards a mortgage, or deposit for a mortgage. And obviously, if I was to actually stop boozing, which is the kind of motivating thing that I was thinking about this evening, it's like, wow, I could put away so much money, and I could put away maybe nearly £1,000 a month towards a deposit, and then I could I could build up some real momentum. And obviously on top of that, you can obviously buy nice things for yourself that you want, like things that you actually invest in, rather than you literally just piss up the wall or the urinal, as the case may be. And it's like, I don't know, I've just kind of had this epiphany. I guess it's something that's been on my mind for a long time now. And it's one of those things where I feel like whenever there's a big change in one's life, it usually starts, the genesis is usually it's the idea, and then the idea, you sort of adopt it, and you kind of internally, you give it the nod, and you actually want to start behaving according to it, and then the next move is actually implementing it. And that's obviously the tricky part, as I've already touched on. And it's sort of this kind of there's that guy called, I think he's called Benjamin Libet, I think that was his name. He did those experiments about whether action happened, how soon actions sort of occur after the cognitive sort of build up in the mind to sort of make the action happen, type of thing. Anyway, it's kind of like that thing of, you need enough cognitive load before something happens, and another way of putting that is you need to think about something enough before you actually start behaving according to it and changing your behavior according to it. And I think I'm at that tipping point now where I've thought about booze for a long time, and it's something where I've tried to. A couple of months ago, I had a bit of potential that I built up. I managed to do 10 or maybe 14 days where I only boozed once, which is very, very exceptional for me. But now I'm back at that same spot, and it's well, if I look back on the last 4 or 5 weeks, it's there's been several occasions where I have boozed and I've set myself back, and I've ruined my kind of build up. It's in rugby, they sort of, I know I keep using a lot of analogies, but in rugby they say it's like the fourth breakdown or the fifth breakdown, towards, and you just know that the more breakdowns you get, the closer you get to the try line, and the more likely you are to actually score. And it's a bit like that with anything in life. I think it's a simple thing of actually doing, number one, which is obviously goes without saying, but is highly important and doesn't get enough credit, is actually just doing it, putting your shoes on and going outside and doing it. And the second thing is the keeping on doing it. And I'm good at doing it and just getting up and starting it, but executing and following through is the part where I've been found wanting. And I think reason why I've been found wanting in that department is because of booze, to some extent. Not the be all and end all, not the death knell or the kind of, you know, as I say, the paramount consideration, but it's weighed heavily in the equation. You could say 30 odd percent, I would estimate. And I'm at the point now where I just don't want to be that guy who's walking home. I'm sure you can relate, that guy who's, if anyone's watching of course, who's walking home at like, you know, 4, 5, 6, you know, it pains me to say 7 in the morning, you know, 8, whatever in the morning. And you're walking home and you've had a heavy night, and you know, you can hear the birds, and you know what I'm talking about. You can probably relate to what I'm saying. And it's like, I'd rather just have nice things, you know, nice new pair of trainers. I know I'm not trying to advocate like, you know, retail therapy or like making poor financial decisions and just blowing it on clothes or, you know, a new car or whatever you want to get, but I just think that I'd rather have the new clothes than like have spent it on booze. And I think it's just so difficult in the UK for people to break out of the cycle, because the pub, I've heard it said, is like the new parliament, or some people say in a way it's like a church, it's like a parish, you know, it's a community environment. And that's, for Londoners, I think that's really kind of like lacking, because like we're so isolated in London and we spend so much time like on our own in our flats, or like kind of like in our own heads, especially like online and stuff. And obviously I'm not like gonna sort of criticize pubs and criticize boozing, because it's like, it is part of our culture and it's so important to our culture. And I would never want to see pubs shut down. I'd never want to see pubs go out of business. I think they're amazing. I've had so many amazing experiences in pubs and around pubs, and I love pubs. But I just think that being said, like, my current perspective on boozing is like, boozing is something that will harm your results in whatever you're trying to do in life, unless you're literally like a paid alcoholic, which I don't think exists as a profession. Then like, boozing is sure to hurt your momentum, and if it hurts your momentum, it will hurt your results, because momentum is so important to like results in whatever field you're in. You need to build up momentum, and it's like, it will hurt your results, that's for sure. It will hurt your bank balance, that's for sure. And listen, in London, like, that's no small thing. In London, you're going to be shelling out, you know, 7, 8, 9 pounds for a single beer, and more if you're getting, you know, shots or, you know, alcoholic like spirits. So, and then obviously there's the cigarettes, which you've got to consider. Then there's the impact on health, which you've got to consider, which is like really, really big. Then there's impact on behavior, like, you know, I'm not saying that I've, you know, broken the law for alcohol, but it impacts one's behavior. It's going to impact your relationships. It's going to impact so much. And like, you just have to, again, I'm speaking to myself here more than anything, I think you just have to sort of zoom out and just be like, well, we know that time passes really quickly. It does for everybody. Like, where do you want to be in like 3 years time, or 4 years time, or 5 years time? And it's really, it is kind of around the corner. And it's just that sacrifice you have to make for that medium term, 3, 4, 5 years, where like at the end of that period of time, you're just going to be laughing, and you're just going to be looking back and thinking, I've got such a sense of achievement. Like, I've actually done something that I'm proud of, and I've actually put my money where my mouth is, and I've put my actions where behind my words, and I've achieved something great. Shirt slipping all the way down. And I think that feeling of achievement and of accomplishment, this is turning into like a Tony Robbins like kind of motivational speech. Anyway, whatever. As I say, it's cathartic and it's therapeutic to talk about these things. But it's like, you know, that's not a long time, and you can do so much in that time. You can save so much money, and it's like, you could save a deposit in that amount of time if you live carefully and you live within your means. And it's like, you know, I just think like, yeah, and you could get, you know, a new motorbike. Like, I ride bikes, get a new motorbike, or like, you know, there's so much you could do, like whole new wardrobe, like holidays, whatever. But like, booze is just, you know, £500 in a month, which is what I was spending on booze. That's actually a holiday. That's like a weekend away once a month. Like, that's a lot of money. So yeah, these are just some thoughts on booze, and I will log, like I will update my progress in this department, and I hope I can carry on. I boozed once last week. I had five boozes. I had 5 drinks. So I'm going to see how long I can go on for, and I'm going to see what changes like happen in my life, and how far I can go with this, and like how much it will impact everything else. But I personally think it's almost like the cornerstone of my problems. I think it's in the very center of all the things that have gone wrong. You could say gone wrong, or you could say you were learning, whatever, but it's really at the center of like the things that have been holding me back over the last few years, and that's why I'm going to make a concerted effort to address it now, whilst I'm still in my 20s, before I get into my 30s. I'm on the dawn of I'm at the sort of, turn of, my sort of decade, and I want to get a handle on this before it really entrenches itself. And my perspective going forward is alcohol should be reserved for special occasions, like a wedding, or like, you achieved a milestone, you saved £1,000, and like you're celebrating. Okay, I've just saved £1,000. Like, okay, I'll celebrate now. Like that should be like where alcohol comes in, like for a real achievement that you can really pat yourself on the back for. On a special occasion, maybe once a month, you can drink. That's my perspective on it right now. I think it's a once a month thing. It's like something reserved for special occasions. Anyway, those are my scribbled sort of stream of consciousness thoughts on the issue.